The wind howled through the bare branches like a grieving widow as Eliza Harper stood on the cracked concrete porch of the only home she had known for 15 years. Snowflakes, the first of the season, drifted lazily from a gunmetal sky, melting on her cheeks and mixing with the tears she refused to acknowledge. Her suitcase, a battered black roller with one broken wheel, sat beside her like an unwelcome companion. Inside it were the few possessions her husband, Mark, had allowed her to take: 2 changes of clothes, a worn photograph of her late mother, a handful of toiletries, and the divorce papers still warm from the printer. "Get out before winter hits," Mark had snarled, his face twisted with the same contempt that had replaced love years ago. "You're a drain, Eliza. Always have been." The door slammed behind her with a finality that echoed in her bones. At 42, she was suddenly homeless, penniless beyond the $300 in her coat pocket, and utterly alone in the rural hills of Vermont. She had no family left. Her parents were gone, her sister estranged after years of Mark's manipulation. Friends had drifted away, tired of her excuses for the bruises and the isolation. The nearest town, Maple Ridge, was 8 miles down a winding mountain road that would soon be impassable with snow. Eliza pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders and began walking. The first night, she slept in an abandoned barn on the edge of old Mr. Whitaker's property. The hay was moldy and the roof leaked, but it kept the worst of the wind off her. She rationed a granola bar from her bag and stared at the darkness, wondering how her life had unraveled so completely. Mark's affair with his secretary had been the final blow, but the rot had set in long before. Years of control, financial abuse, and emotional erosion had left her a shell. Now, the shell was cracking in the cold. By the 3rd day, hunger gnawed at her like a living thing. She had hitchhiked part way, but most drivers avoided the disheveled woman on the roadside. Her money bought her a loaf of bread, peanut butter, and a cheap flashlight at a gas station. The temperature dropped below freezing at night. Eliza knew she wouldn't survive long without shelter. She left the main road and struck out into the dense woods that blanketed the hills. Old logging trails, overgrown and forgotten, guided her deeper. Legends spoke of these hills, hiding old mines, moonshiner cabins, and even rumored doomsday bunkers from the Cold War era. Desperation made her believe in Legion. On the 5th day, with snow now sticking to the ground and her feet numb in inadequate boots, Eliza stumbled upon an anomaly on a steep hillside. What looked like ordinary underbrush and fallen logs revealed upon closer inspection a deliberate camouflage. She pulled at a tangle of branches and vines, revealing a heavy metal door set into the earth, half buried under decades of soil and leaves. Rust had eaten at the edges, but the door was solid. A faded sign, barely legible, read, "Property of E. Harlan. Keep out." With trembling hands and the last of her strength, Eliza pried at the door. It was unlocked, miraculously, or perhaps fatefully. It groaned open on protesting hinges, revealing a dark tunnel sloping downward. She clicked on her flashlight. The beam cut through dust motes and revealed concrete walls reinforced with steel. This was no natural cave. This was a shelter. Heart-pounding, Eliza stepped inside, pulling the door shut behind her to block the wind. The air was stale, but not foul. She descended 20 feet into the hillside. The tunnel opened into a main chamber, roughly 20 by 30 feet. Along one wall stood metal shelving units packed with supplies. Cans upon cans of food, vegetables, fruits, meats, soups, beans, vacuum-sealed bags of rice, pasta, and powdered milk, cases of bottled water, a small wood-burning stove with a vent pipe leading upward through the rock, a cot with musty but intact blankets, a first aid kit, tools, even books, and a handwritten journal. Eliza sank to her knees and wept. The shelter had been prepared by Elias Harlan, a reclusive engineer who had died in the early 2000s, according to the journal. Paranoid about societal collapse, he had built this place over years, stocking it meticulously. The food was old, but most of it was still edible. Canned goods lasted decades, and the vacuum-sealed items had held a small solar panel array hidden on the surface, now covered by snow and debris, had once charged batteries for LED lights. A rainwater collection system fed into a filtration setup. For the first time in years, Eliza felt something like safety. She spent the next weeks methodically inventorying everything. The journal became her companion. Elias wrote of his loneliness, his lost wife, his fear of the world. In a strange way, Eliza felt she had found a kindred spirit across time. She cleaned the shelter, aired out the blankets, started small fires in the stove using stored wood and kindling. She ate sparingly at first, savoring each meal. Beef stew, peaches in syrup, crackers with peanut butter. Her body, weakened by stress and exposure, began to recover. Winter settled over the hills with fury. Blizzards raged outside, but inside the buried shelter, the temperature stayed livable. Eliza rationed carefully, estimating the supplies could last her 2 to 3 years if managed well. She read every book, survival manuals, classic novels, old engineering texts. She wrote in the journal herself, chronicling her days, her regrets, her tentative hopes. Memories flooded her during the long, dark hours. She recalled her childhood in these same hills before she met Mark at 27. She had been an aspiring writer then, full of dreams. He had seemed stable, ambitious. Love had blinded her to the slow erosion of her spirit. Now, in the quiet of the shelter, fragments of her old self began to stir. She explored further tunnels branching from the main chamber. One led to a small generator room with diesel fuel stored in barrels, old but perhaps usable. Another revealed a hidden cache of weapons, rifles, ammunition, a pistol. Elias's paranoia made manifest. Eliza had never touched a gun, but she learned from the manuals. Knowledge was power. As weeks turned to months, Eliza transformed the shelter. She organized, repaired, planned. She melted snow for water when the tanks ran low. She kept a calendar on the wall, marking days. Outside, the world was a white wasteland. Inside, she was rebuilding. One particularly bitter night, as the wind screamed above, Eliza lit a candle and opened a new notebook she had found. She began to write her story, not just the survival, but the deeper one. The story of how a thrown-away woman found not just shelter, but herself. Part 1 continues with extensive daily spring arrived with a hesitant thaw. Water dripped from the entrance tunnel as snow melted above. Eliza emerged blinking into sunlight for the first time in months, her body stronger, her mind clearer. The world had changed little on the surface, trees budding, birds returning, but she had changed profoundly. She knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. Supplies, while abundant, were finite. Her old life in Maple Ridge called with questions: legal divorce, possible assets she might claim, the need for human connection. Yet fear held her back. What if Mark found her? What if the shelter was discovered? Venturing to town cautiously, disguised in layers and a hat, Eliza learned that Mark had moved on quickly, marrying his secretary. The house was sold. No one had looked for her. Most assumed she had left the state. The indifference stung, but also liberated. Back in the shelter, she faced new challenges. A late storm damaged the solar setup. She repaired it using Elias's tools and knowledge. She began a small garden plot near the entrance during summer, growing vegetables to supplement stores. Foraging became part of her routine. Berries, mushrooms, herbs, always careful to avoid detection. The journal entries grew longer. Eliza wrote stories within stories, fictional tales inspired by her life, survival guides, letters to her younger self. Writing became her salvation and purpose. She dreamed of one day publishing under a pseudonym, turning her pain into something meaningful. Isolation tested her. Loneliness brought hallucinations and dark nights of the soul. She spoke aloud to Elias's ghost, debating philosophy and ethics. She trained with the weapons, not for violence, but for confidence. When a bear wandered too close to her garden, she scared it off with noise and warning shots. As seasons cycled again, another winter survived more comfortably. She made contact with the outside world selectively. An elderly librarian in Maple Ridge became a cautious friend. Eliza traded foraged goods and crafts for books and news. She learned of broader world events, but chose her hillside sanctuary as home. Romance came unexpectedly. A forest ranger, Thomas, stumbled upon her trails during a search for a missing hiker. Their meetings were tentative at first, conversations on neutral ground. Thomas respected her boundaries and her strength. Slowly, trust grew. He helped reinforce the shelter, and in time, shared her space during harsh weather. Eliza's story reached its resolution not in dramatic escape, but in quiet triumph. She finalized her divorce remotely, claimed a small settlement through a lawyer. She published her first book anonymously, a memoir disguised as fiction about a woman who found refuge in the earth. It gained quiet acclaim. Years later, the buried hillside shelter remained her core home, expanded with Thomas's help into a true haven. She had been thrown out before winter, broken and discarded. Instead of perishing, she had unearthed not just food and shelter, but resilience, creativity, and a second chance at life. The hills kept their secret, and Eliza Harper kept her freedom.